Join me in pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Andy, I have to leave about 5:10. I have to leave about 5:10.
Okay.
10 past.
All right. Can I get a motion to approve today's agenda?
I'll motion to approve the agenda.
Second. Thanks, Ed. Approval of the minutes of the January 19th and the February 16th meeting. Did anybody have any corrections that they saw in those 2 minutes? They look good to
They
me.
look good to me, too.
Okay.
If I may ask a question about that, you'll notice that there are different formats. Town Clerk Sheila Kane is assisting us now with our meetings and preparing the minutes. Do you all have a preference in format, or
No,
either way is fine?
No,
if this isn't any harder to do, Sheila, this is perfect. I mean, you know,
The newer format you refer to?
yeah, because
Yeah.
you can just go, well, line, 132, you misspelled a word or something.
Mhm.
No, I like it.
Very good,
Excellent.
very good.
Well, if nobody's got any corrections on those minutes, could I get a motion to approve them? Ed,
I'll second.
Tony, thank you.
Can we get a vote on that as well?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
It's okay,
Uh,
it's all fine.
All in favor, say aye or raise their hand.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, 0. Okay, I don't see anybody in here, public comment. Would there be anybody that would ever comment on Zoom?
We haven't offered it for planning board meetings. I think we did a couple times at the very beginning,
Right, yeah.
but we haven't lately. So
Okay. Well, seeing no public, we will have no comment. Okay, well, we'll get on into old business, which, Wes, if I can call on you to bring everybody up to speed as to what transpired at the town council meeting.
yes, sir, absolutely. At the March 2nd, 2021 town council meeting, the town council met and heard a presentation from Chad Meadows with CodeWright Planners, which is a consultant assisting us in updating the town code. Following the presentation, the town council took action and voted unanimously, and I'll use the exact language from the motion, to instruct town staff to take valuable elements out of the adoption draft written by CodeWright for review by the planning board and the town council for future consideration. And it was approved unanimously. So as a result of that, we town staff will be compiling different elements out of the zoning chapter, subdivision chapter 28, or definitions that we feel are important and need to be updated, whether it be with the language provided by CodeWright or some other language. But most likely it'll be the language provided by CodeWright on most of the changes that we're looking at right now. The changes that I've already started working on are mostly the state law changes, the ones that we absolutely need to make. And I've put a list of all those together. And then we can address those first. I was thinking that would be our schedule. So the way it would work is we would be presenting zoning text amendment application to you, the planning board, as we always have. It'll be formatted in our current format. The town council, the action they took, they felt that our current format is more user-friendly. So what we would do is let's take example language from manufactured homes. we would take, you know, the language from the code update adoption draft, and we would format it into our current town code on Muni Code, that format. And it would be presented to you all as zoning text amendment applications like you've always seen. And in these zoning text amendment applications, we could do more than one section. We could address, if we wanted, and what I'm thinking we'll do, we could address manufactured homes, temporary healthcare structures, signage, minimum living space, subdivisions, and performance guarantees. These are on the list of things that we need to do to be in compliance with state law. So your marching orders have changed vastly since the last time we met. At this point, like I said, we town staff will be coming back to you all with a zoning text amendment application that'll include the state law changes. And if you all have any other guidance on specific sections that you'd like to see included at the same time, we can certainly do that as well. I know that's a brief explanation, but that kind of brings us up to where we stand now, Mr. Chairman.
The 160D regulations that you've got to bring forward, they will all have to be ZTAs?
The ones that are related to zoning or land development will be zoning text amendments.
Right.
Which will most likely be all of them. If it's not zoning related or land development related, then it could be done in the form of a town code update that doesn't go through you all. But at least the ones that I've seen are pretty much all development related and will have to go through you all. And as previously mentioned, there are, Town Attorney Ben Gallup did in his review provide comments on and suggested language that included 160D references. And while we're hitting on these subjects, we may try to add some of those to this as well. But I don't know if we'll be able to do it all together, all at the same time in one step.
Right.
Right now, the main focus will be taking the state law changes out of the town code update as directed by council.
Would we, I guess one question that I would have about having the town attorney put together these multiple ZTAs, I mean, what kind of time frame? I mean, would it be possible for us to look at and discuss and vote on multiple ZTAs at a single meeting?
I feel confident that I can put together these ETAs and have them back to you prior to or no later than consideration at your April meeting. And I would certainly most likely seek comment from Mr. Gallup if needed prior to that point. But I feel like I can make the changes necessary.
So you won't necessarily have to rely on Ben to craft the language because it's already been crafted.
Exactly, and he's already reviewed and commented the language in the zoning chapter. And so he has already seen the majority of the changes that need to be incorporated. So I don't think he doesn't have to draft it for sure. I think that's something that I can do.
What, outside of manufactured homes, what would be another source of regulation coming out of that 160D that would affect how our existing regulations operate?
The first one that comes to mind is right now we have as uses in the town, we have permitted uses by right, and then we have conditional uses. Well, one change in 160D is you no longer have conditional uses. They are special use permits instead of conditional use permits. That's the first one that comes to mind. That we would need to adjust, where every reference to conditional use permit would have to be changed to special use permit.
but it's more, verbiage than actual regulation, just going from
Right.
conditional use to special use.
It's more, to use your words, the way you just put it, yes, it's more verbiage.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily new substantive changes that change your development patterns or the way permits are issued. I mean, it doesn't really have any effect other than references and verbiage.
Right.
So what's the difference specifically between conditional and special?
It's pretty much the same thing. They're both a result of a quasi judicial procedure, similar to how this planning board has the authority and acts as the board of adjustment to issue variances and decide on appeals through a quasi judicial procedure. Conditional use permits are also the same, except in conditional use permits, planning board, you all make a recommendation, you're an advisory to the town council, and then they hold the quasi judicial public hearing. It's essentially the same thing. It's pretty much the same thing, and at least the way we will be implementing it. You all would review and make a recommendation on a special use permit, and the town council holds a public hearing. Now, we probably could set it up where the planning board, because I think the state law does give the planning board the authority to issue the special use permit. But my thinking is that we would want to stick close to our current permitting process, which requires you all to act as an advisory body and make a recommendation, and the town council is the decision maker.
Anybody else have a question?
Now, how many do you think you're looking at? You gave a list at the beginning.
State law changes?
Yeah. Is that the total list that you gave at the beginning, to your knowledge, or?
Right now, we're looking at 7
7.
that are state law related.
Okay.
That would need to go in as a ZTA rather than a town code amendment.
Yes, sir. These are either in the subdivision ordinance or the zoning ordinance. The majority are in the zoning ordinance. Only two are from the subdivision ordinance.
Uh-huh.
So then 5 would be zoning.
Wes, you read them off pretty quick. Could you read them off a little slower?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Performance guarantees.
What was that again? I'm sorry.
Performance guarantees, that's in the subdivisions chapter of the town code update, the adoption draft. The next would be temporary health care structures. The next is protest petitions. The last two I said, temporary health care structures, protest petitions, are from the zoning chapter. The first one, performance guarantees, is subdivision. Signage, that's a zoning chapter, and that's pretty much a complete replacement. Take exactly what they have proposed and put it where, and reformat our ordinance with their language. The next one is a minimum amount of, or the minimum size of single-family dwellings. That's the zoning ordinance. You no longer can restrict the square footage of a single-family dwelling. We still have in our current ordinance a restriction on the enclosed living space. Minimum restriction, I should say. The next one would be subdivisions, creating language for minor subdivisions, which would be 4 lots or less. Doesn't have to go through the same procedure as a major subdivision review. And lastly, manufactured homes.
Now, how much do we get? Do we have any editing capability, or we just take them from the state and plug them in?
In my opinion, the way it should be worded, the way the language is presented in the adoption draft, it should be consistent with the statutes. Now, as far as wordsmithing and things like that, I mean,
Yeah,
I'm sure there's probably some
but there's not a lot of discussion.
leeway, but at the same time, we can only adopt requirements and language that the statutes allow us to adopt. And and implement.
So basically, you're gonna say, here they are, so just nod and sign off on them.
It's a possibility. But you all certainly can provide any input you like. And if you all had heartburn or concern about the way something was written, if I can't answer the question or, confirm that it's something that we can change, then I would probably have to defer to the attorney.
And then that goes back up to the state, right?
I'm sorry?
Then that would then be referred back to the state. Nothing can be changed unless it comes back down from the state. Is that correct?
Our ordinances, our town code is based on the North Carolina general statutes. Yes, sir. But as far as if you all had questions or heartburn about the way our language is drafted in the adoption draft that we're saying we want to put into our current code, if you all wanted to revise the language in some way, we would just need to ensure that we're still within the letter of the law, so to speak.
Oh, Wes, could you just kind of give us a thumbnail sketch of how we as a town could stiffen regulations on manufactured homes and still stay in the guideline of state requirements? Like, I mean, what do manufactured homes have to comply with here in Dare County that they wouldn't have to comply with in Raleigh?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind would be flood related.
Sure.
As far as zoning goes, I'm not sure. I have not gotten to the point where I have read the statutes on manufactured homes. I know our language in the adoption draft of the town code update does propose specific requirements to go along with aesthetics. The appearance of the manufactured homes, like should you have a deck, you're required to have a deck and steps that go up to the front. You're required to remove the hitch. You're required to cover the bottom and enclose the bottom so it's not exposed. But it's all mostly aesthetics related, the specific requirements that have been proposed in the code update language.
So these manufactured homes are meant for living. It's not like any bigger shed coming from.
This is for manufactured homes for dwelling units.
And so those a dwelling unit would have a bathroom and power. And
Correct.
mechanical and so forth.
Correct. We currently do not allow manufactured homes. State law says you have to.
Well, what I would certainly recommend, at least moving in the direction of manufactured homes, is we got to do it on the state level, but restrict the heck out of them on the local level. I mean, everywhere where we can make it more restrictive to have a manufactured home adhere to the stringent regulations that every other house has to have being built in Southern Shores.
Right. It would be subject to setback requirements, lot coverage
Sure.
requirements. And then in addition to that, what Code Right proposed was mostly aesthetic related requirements.
Well, and that's kind of out of our purview as far as a town sometimes. I mean, they could roll in a pink one and we'd be out of luck.
The other thing is too, and I'll see if I can have this question answered between now and our next meeting, but I'm not sure what our covenants in Southern Shore say, what the SSCA or CPOA or Mallard Code, there could be restrictions there that could still prohibit it. And we, the town, as a local entity,
Right.
local government, cannot restrict them, but I believe covenants, private homeowners associations and et cetera, can restrict them probably.
Yeah, I mean, 58 sets of covenants, I
Yeah.
believe, in Southern Shores.
No, there's more than that.
Yeah,
There-
so, I mean,
What-
that's protection.
Yeah, I was the chairman, remember, of that. And I don't remember any covenants for that type of home, manufactured home.
Probably never came up though.
No, but it probably never came up, but in reading the different covenants, that I had to read, I never remember that being mentioned. So it could be but I personally don't ever remember that being mentioned in any of the blocks. So it could be in there. I mean, they have some strange things in there. I could tell you some
Oh, I
real,
know. No,
really strange things that's left over from 1955. But I don't particularly, just as an early, I don't
Okay, yeah.
particularly, now Chickahawk is a different ballgame.
Right.
You know, Chickahawk may have that, but the Civic Association, I
Well,
don't remember.
it wouldn't really influence, I mean, I guess it could in looking at how specific and how strict we want our requirements to be, but either way, regardless of what they say, we still have to allow it.
Right. Elizabeth, did you have something?
Some manufactured homes engineered for hurricane force winds.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I mean,
I think that would be within our purview considering where we live.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that we can't regulate what they look like specifically, but they have to adhere to the most stringent rule that any other, home constructed here in Southern Shores.
What about if someone added on to a home with manufactured components? You want to double the size of your home, and turns out to be cheaper to do it with manufactured components. I mean, I've seen whole houses go up piece by piece, like blocks.
We've allowed modular homes, you talking about like modular homes?
In the context of adding on to a house, if someone's decided rather than
Yeah,
do it that way.
they're still subject to building code requirements, flood requirements, whatever zoning requirements apply. This is referring to, your typical single wide or double wide manufactured home.
Okay.
Well, I mean, we're certainly, kind of stuck with what we got to do on the state level. So I would say that this board would be certainly in favor of making it as stringent as possible outside of the state requirement to allow them.
Yes, sir.
And lean towards that avenue of the ZTA.
Well, I mean, would you like for me to bring up on the screen what's proposed in the language?
Sure.
Shall be occupied as a single-family dwelling, shall not be used solely for the purposes of storage, shall be set up in accordance with the standards established by the North Carolina Department of Insurance and the most current version of the state of North Carolina regulations for manufactured/mobile homes. It shall maintain a minimum width of 16 feet. It shall be oriented with the longest axis parallel to the lot frontage to the maximum extent practicable. Towing apparatus, wheels, axles, and transporting lights shall be removed. It shall include a continuous permanent masonry foundation or masonry curtain wall of solid brick or brick veneer, unpierced except for required ventilation and access, installed under the perimeter. It shall include stairs, porches, entry platforms, ramps, and other means of entrance and exit that are installed or constructed in accordance with the standards set by the North Carolina State Building Code. They shall be attached firmly to the primary structure and anchored securely to the ground. It shall maintain exterior siding comparable in composition, appearance, and durability to the exterior siding commonly used in standard residential construction, which consists of one or more of the following: vinyl or aluminum lap siding, whose reflectivity does not exceed that of flat white paint. Number 2, cedar or other wood siding. 3, stucco siding. 4, brick or stone siding. It shall maintain a roof pitch with a minimum vertical rise of at least 3 feet for each 12 feet of horizontal run. It shall include a roof finished with a Class C or better roofing material that is commonly used in standard residential construction. And it shall provide an eave protection of no less than 6 inches, which may include a gutter. In addition to these requirements, they have to meet all flood requirements. So that's a pretty good starting point, in my opinion.
Well, that certainly could leave the door open for, something that a lot of people would be jumping up and down, calling it a trailer. Take the wheels off of it, the lights, and put some, skirting around it. I mean, granted, it would have to meet Department of Insurance regulations, which I'm assuming would be minimum regulations in coastal zone construction.
I couldn't speak to that.
That we absolutely have the right to request there. Now, I don't know. I think that whatever you can do to goose up the regulation to make them comply with everything else that we have to comply with here as far as building a dwelling in Southern Shores needs to be noted in there somewhere. I'm not sure how you do it.
It would just fall in the schedule of district regulations where permitted use by right, single-family dwelling.
Yeah.
Permitted use by right, manufactured home. And then in that same zone, it would be in each zoning district, like RS1. And in that same district, you still have your lot coverage, you still have your setbacks, driveway requirement, parking requirements, all that.
Wes, have you ever had an application for one?
We have not, no, sir. We've had, over the years, we've received permit applications for modular homes,
Right.
which we issued permits for, but we have never received one for anything that this is referring to.
Okay.
And basically, this is a modular home definition, would you say?
A modular home is the one, at least the ones here have been brought in, the pieces were brought in on a truck, and then it was all assembled into a home. Whereas these, in some cases, are brought in one piece as the home with wheels on it and everything, skirting, underskirting. I think, that's my opinion, I think they're a little different, but.
The manufactured home is considered personal property, and it's licensed by the state as such. Until you take it and put it on a permanent foundation that owner of the trailer owns the piece of property. You put it on a permanent foundation and take the wheels off, and it becomes real property at that point.
Right.
Before that, it is personal property. So this really is about trailers. The manufactured homes is about trailers. The modular homes, they arrive as real property. They arrive on a truck to go on a permanent foundation that's already there.
Yeah.
And you've seen them probably 3 or 4 wide, 3 or 4 tall. Put it together, and once it's done, you can't tell if it sticks up or not. My question is that at the time you have a new manufactured home that arrives, you get a permit for one, or if you build a house, it has to meet the state of North Carolina building code, right? So a manufactured home that was going to be brought in to be put in place, it ought to have to meet the current building code.
Yeah.
Like if you brought one in that was 15 years old and it met the code at the time, too bad. If it didn't meet the code of today, then we shouldn't allow it. And I have no idea if manufactured homes actually meet, the code in this coastal zone. I don't know if they can even be purchased with that level of.
Yep.
I know I know modular homes can. Modular homes are typically they're considered to be structurally more sound than stick built. But manufactured homes, you know, it's a totally different story.
Yeah. Well, we're not gonna fight the state on what they are, but we certainly need to make, some pointed provisions in the ZTA that we move forward that incorporates the state language into our language. And that might be somewhere where Ben may need to hop in and see what we can and can't do from a legal standpoint. Anybody else have anything on modulars?
It's interesting, the manufactured home requirements here. I've never seen one that had that much of a pitch roof.
312?
Three,
312?
3 and 12?
On a trailer.
Yeah.
And there's also a requirement for an overhang. You know, I've never seen that either. So I don't know if a person could say, okay, I've got a manufactured home, I don't meet the roof requirements, but I'm gonna build that. I'm gonna add that on top. It just adds a big old can of worms for you.
Yeah, when I worked in Chowan County in Edenton, they were there, and the requirements weren't, they didn't include things, at least there, that were, I'll say strict, the way it's proposed right now, but we will certainly keep your comments. I've written down all your comments, and we'll keep those in mind before we bring it back to you all.
Well, and I also think, Wes, that it would probably behoove us in that language to mention that they have to adhere to the covenant that may pertain. I mean, granted, we know that there are a lot of different covenants in Southern Shores. The older covenants that are, you know, in the older neighborhoods are very vague, but they get a little bit more specific as the covenants that are newer. So it would be something that whoever would entertain, you know, bringing in a manufactured home would certainly have to comply with or be aware of the covenant restriction possibilities.
We, the Planning and Code Enforcement Department, we do our best to try to spread the word about, or for Tony knows, and we've actually added more steps in the process, but almost all of our building permit applications and documents you receive in the packet all say, we encourage you to obtain the permission authorization from the applicable homeowners association. I mean, I wouldn't be, and I mean, I don't think it's necessary to add it into our town code, but administratively, it's applied.
Yeah.
But there's no legal binding, nothing legally binding about someone that's coming in with one of these that violates the covenants. If it violates the covenants, it's that neighborhood has got to object to it and
Sure.
pursue whatever redress they can come up with. The town's not going to go to the plate for a covenant issue.
That's correct.
No.
On a couple occasions, Wes might remember, we actually had to go to court to change.
The Civic Association.
The Civic Association went to court, one in particular, like on 9th Avenue, for instance, where they were putting things in that they weren't allowed to put in. They were putting two things in, one was not allowed. So they had to change what they did, and we actually had to go to court. And it delayed things for about 6 months. It cost $5,000 to go to court. And eventually, they finally came in to talk, and it was changed. So it was the Civic Association that did that. But you're right, where the block itself has control over certain areas. So the block that a building is going into could get together and file legal action for it not to happen.
Right.
It's happened a couple times.
Yeah, I know.
It has happened a couple times, but trying to get that block together is you know,
And like
Rubik's
Wes says,
Cube.
it's, and you as well, Ed, it is two separate entities.
Yeah.
And the town has to issue a building permit, whether SSCA or Chickahawk or Fairway Drive, homeowner association sign off or not, right?
Yes,
That's correct.
Yeah.
So-
yes, that's correct.
Moves ahead.
Yeah.
We can only encourage, we can't
Yeah,
require.
sure.
It's up to the civic associations to put a restriction on it, you know, and say
Or
no.
neighbor, for that matter. It's
Yeah.
just a matter
Or
when,
the neighbor, yeah.
when you get to that point, it's like, who's gonna put up the cash?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just to take it to court.
Yes.
That's where you're going. And most people fall down on that because they just don't want to get into it.
Yeah, we send reports to the SSCA and CPOA of permits that have been issued so that they have an idea if there was a permit issued and they had not heard or seen anything about it.
Okay, well, I think we've beat the manufactured homes up as much as we can. I had a question just from our last meeting, Wes. Jan brought up a concern about, you know, the townhouse language and regulations. Would that be something that we need to look at, or, I mean, where are we now?
Right now, in our current code, townhouses are only allowed as a group, as a part of a group development.
Right.
So that would have to go through a conditional use permit process. There
Uh-huh.
is currently not a permitted use by right where, say, someone owns a lot that's 40 or 60,000 square feet, and they want to put a couple townhouses on it. It's currently not permitted that
Yeah,
way.
okay. So we're,
I think we're okay where we
Okay.
are.
all right. And then, the wind generation facility definition and what is currently in place, is that adequate?
They were trying to, or Code Right had said that there were different terms used for that type of use/technology. And I'm happy with the way it is and the way it was adopted when we first adopted the ordinance, which is wind generation facility.
Right.
So I think we're okay where we are, what we have with that.
Then when we met a couple of Fridays ago, and Elizabeth was in on this meeting, we were discussing the Eve situation. And I just want to make sure that we're squared away as to what is allowed in the front setback as far as eaves are concerned, and, you know, make sure that we got that language squared away, because we talked about it at the last planning board meeting a little bit too. The ZTA that the planning board sent to town council that passed it was 9/5/2018 is the final lot coverage ordinance. And it, as a planning board, we did not send any recommendation to put eaves in that definition in the lot coverage.
Eaves
Eaves,
are not in the consideration?
they were not in the language that town council passed because we didn't address it. I mean, I'm looking at the final ZTA, and there's no mention of eaves, but eaves are mentioned and regulated in the definition of building setback line, correct?
Right now, it mentions eaves in the building setback line definition,
But not in impervious?
but not for lot, nothing with respect to lot coverage.
Can you pull that definition up?
It's
I mean, I don't want to belabor what we're doing with eaves. I think were okay, how they're addressed, but the planning board chose not to include the eaves in the original ZTA that was not approved by town council at the July town council meeting of 2018. At that point, it did have eaves in there. The outermost 4 feet of eaves shall not contribute to lot coverage was the language that was in that ZTA. We chose as a planning board, if you remember this, Elizabeth, we chose not to put any eve language in there because it was addressed in the definition of front setback or building setback line. So,
But I think you have to address eaves as just part of the lot coverage because it's the roof.
now we didn't,
I mean, why would you cut the eaves out from impervious, from calculating lot coverage?
well, we did.
Uh,
But if you read, or can you read that out to us, Wes, what you blue highlighted?
The definition for building setback line means a line parallel to or concentric with the street right-of-way, establishing the minimum allowable distance between such right-of-way and the nearest portion of any building, excluding the outermost 3 feet of any uncovered porches, steps, eaves, gutters, and similar fixtures. And that's from the right-of-way to a line that's parallel to it.
Which is basically the front yard setback.
It's basically saying that those things can encroach up to 3 feet in your front setback.
But in further discussion that we had a couple of Fridays ago, and we spoke to Eves, we were in agreement that it just should, for eaves anyway, it just shouldn't be the front. It should be the other 3 sides of the
Yeah.
house. So right now, we don't have that language in there, and I'm just wondering if we're stirring the pot, at some point, we need to address changing that definition anyway, however it occurs. I mean, what,
Yes, sir, I would agree. And, that's something that you all can recommend to the town council. When we bring forth the other changes, you all
Yeah.
can bring it up.
yeah,
I mean, it wasn't really part of the direction that the council gave, but I don't think it would be out of line for you all to make a recommendation on any, or provide council with any recommended changes that you all see fit. We could, and they could certainly be provided to council.
okay. Well, we certainly need to hone in on how eaves are defined and how they are allowed. And then and you and I have talked about what it says currently is the outermost 3 feet of any uncovered porches, steps, eaves, gutters, and similar fixtures. Not quite sure what exactly that would encompass, but as far as having eaves all the way around the building, that makes sense. Having these other allowable encroachments into the front setback does not make sense, in my opinion. I mean, you don't want to have,
Yeah, I can see, that's fine. It's there, and so you ought to count it.
no, that we,
I mean, why confuse it? Just, it's there. So count it.
well, we chose to not introduce any new language as far as eaves go to the lot coverage. You were allowed 3 additional feet of eaves.
Whether it exceeded your lot coverage?
No, the setback.
Okay, well, I
Yeah,
can see
not-
the setback. I understand, but
Well-
everything nowadays is going more towards impervious surface, and it's 30% lot coverage. And people are pushing lot coverage to the max, so
Well, that's what,
you can't pretend like you're not seeing something that's impervious.
well, I mean, I think that we certainly addressed that with the planning board back in 2018. And what was before us was 4 feet of eaves that weren't going to count into the setback,
Yeah.
i.e. the lot coverage. So I'm fine with the 3-foot eaves, but take it around all 4 sides and allow up to 3 feet of eaves. But we have to, right now, it's not language in that definition, is it?
Yeah, correct. It's, at some point, I don't remember which year it was, 4 or 5, maybe 6 years ago, I can't recall. Dabney Shelton, former permit officer, and I looked into the files at previous houses that had been built over the past 10 years and looked at as-built surveys, and we determined that had been consistently enforced or applied that eaves were not a factor when looking
Right.
at setback requirements. You just look at the foundation.
So is there a separate definition for side setback and rear setback?
There are.
And do they have the same language?
The way our setbacks are established with our current code, it uses the term yard, and it gives a definition of that, saying what's included and what's excluded. So that's where we could put something in there. That's a good suggestion.
And so
And then,
but this part doesn't say anything about the 3 feet sticking out.
no, sir.
I see. Okay.
Well, I think an easy fix would be just simply to allow eaves up to 3 feet in all setback areas that are not counted against you in lot coverage, obviously, because if they're allowed in the setback, the surveyors are pulling from pile to pile or, corner to corner. They're not shooting the eaves to determine the 30% lot coverage.
We can certainly put something together for you all to consider if y'all want to make a recommendation to council on that.
Okay.
The current activity of the ZTAs that you're putting together, is that primarily so that we meet the state mandate for 160D?
The ones that I referred to earlier are state law changes that need to be made to bring us in compliance with state law changes that have been in effect since 2015. Since we started working on town code update. The 160D requirements, that came about a year, 2 years ago, year and a half ago. So we plan on getting to that. And it might be that we put in some of the 160D as well. I mean, there are already some references in the changes proposed by Code Right. So we may try to do it all. I mean, I don't know. I'm thinking we can get this to you all no later than May. It might be possible we can hold a special meeting. April. I'll get it to you all in April, and council could have a public hearing on it in May if everything were to go smoothly. And if that's the case, then we would focus on 160D requirements to have finished by July. Which, again, it's not, someone isn't going to come knock on our door and give us a ticket for not doing the work. We certainly want to do it. And at the town council meeting, while we're on the subject, Ben Gallup suggested something saying, one thing that would be helpful for us to do, or any local government, if they're not going to have it in place by July 1, is to put a statement in the zoning ordinance stating that if there's a conflict between this ordinance and whatever 160D requires, 160D is always the one you go with. Not that exact word, those words obviously, but that would be the effect of it. And that he felt when he said that would quote unquote cover us until we made those changes.
Okay.
Well, and I think back to 160D, I mean, I'm not trying to gum up the works to get, what we need to get settled with ZTAs that concern 160D. I'm just suggesting that at some point in time, we need to address the eaves.
Yes, sir.
But as far as trying to gum up the works, to be efficient, to get what you need to us in the form of a ZTA that would get us in compliance with 160D, that's priority. So,
Yeah, the council directed us to address the elements from the code update.
right.
So that's what we're focusing on at this point.
Okay. Was boathouses a concern?
No, sir, that was, I think boathouse might be, without doing a search, the boathouse might be mentioned once in the town code language, but Code Right, one of their comments was, and this is something on the top, one of the topics that said potential future discussion by the
Yeah.
planning board, is that I think it's something that's mentioned as they're allowed, but there aren't any standards that apply to them. And the suggestion, one of the comments in the public hearing draft was that discussion be had about potential standards that would apply to boathouses. In my opinion, I don't think it's necessary
Yeah.
at this point.
CAMA regulates.
CAMA regulates boathouses, yes, sir. And we, in a sense, we do. We wouldn't allow a single-family dwelling to be built in one.
Right.
So.
Yeah. Okay. Anybody else have anything for Wes? Yeah, I'm good. So Wes, what's our next step? What do we need?
We're going to put together this language in the ZTA in the format you all are familiar with. It'll have numerous changes, or at least the changes we've discussed tonight. I think we can accomplish it in one document, one ZTA ordinance, which will be sent to town council. Your next meeting is April 19th. If it's possible, I may contact you, Mr. Chairman, to do a special meeting, but I don't know if that's even necessary. Because I don't know if council would have an opportunity to review it any sooner if you all did have a special meeting, let's say in 3 or 4 weeks. So it's possible. I may reach out to you all to see about a special meeting.
Well,
But most likely, no later than April 19th, we'll have this in front of you for your consideration.
okay.
We're gonna do 4 o'clock.
Well, if we want to try to do it all in one meeting, then you think it's realistic that we can, and that it's not controversial, we don't need to beat it to death. I mean, maybe we meet earlier and, go a little bit later rather than have a special meeting. I'll leave that up to you, but.
Yes, sir. Okay.
As far as, meeting at 4 o'clock again, if we need to do that rather than have a special meeting and stretch it out to 2 meetings,
All right.
whichever way you know how we get going with things sometimes.
Once I've gotten along with it, I'll give you a call and let you know what my thoughts are, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, okay.
But no later than April 19th, yes, sir. And the
Right.
time will be determined after I speak with you about, how much discussion may be needed.
Well, does anybody have any problem with meeting a little bit early?
No.
If we need to?
No, it's
Robert?
fine.
Okay.
Very good.
And then, does everybody know that, I guess he's resigned?
Yes, sir. I had that. I was going to bring that up in announcements as well. Yes, sir.
Well,
It's okay. No, it's fine. You go ahead. Board member David Neal has resigned from the planning board. Hate to lose him. He's served on the board many years. did a good job. So one of our alternate members, historically, our council has approved or appointed, as most of you know, alternate members as regular members to fill the regular member vacancy. So that appointment will be on the council's regular April meeting agenda, which I believe is April 13th.
Sheila, could you possibly put an asterisk that we need some planning board help in the newsletter? I mean, is that
Absolutely.
something we can do?
That's usually what we do. Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll put out some language, a paragraph in there about the duties and responsibilities of the planning board and say, we have a vacancy. Anyone interested, please submit your application. You all pretty much went through that. So
Sure.
yes, sir. That's what we'll do. Thank you for
Yeah.
a reminder.
Well, I didn't mean to get ahead of our agenda here, but there's no new business. There's no public comment unless, Elizabeth, would you like to?
I just want to say that this 4 o'clock meeting time is clearly popular with the public.
We don't know how many people are watching on YouTube.
Hey, at least it isn't at 9 o'clock in the morning.
No, I don't have comments. Thanks. Andy.
Okay, thanks. Thanks for coming, by the way.
Great.
Three.
There are 3 people watching.
We have 3 folks
Okay.
watching us on YouTube.
And we'll behave. Well, I'm gonna head on down to planning board member comments. Anybody?
No, I'm good.
Wes, do you have any more announcements besides the one that was out of order in the agenda?
Yes, sir. Depending on any action taken by council at any of their upcoming meetings between now and your April 19th meeting, you all will most likely have another amendment included, which would be an amendment to our flood damage prevention ordinance. We are currently in the process of preparing for our, it's typically every 5 years CRS cycle visit. CRS stands for Community Rating System. It's a program the town participates in where we do things, activities is what they refer to as in the program, related to hazard mitigation and flood and emergency management. There are things that we do that we can receive credit for. And ISO, organization ISO, they have representatives that come and make sure every 5 years that we're doing what we have been doing. And right now there's a rating system from 1 to 10, and the lower the number, the better your score. We're a community class 6. And that was an improvement from a 7 in our last visit 5 years ago. And as a result of having a 6, folks who own property or folks who have flood policies, flood insurance policies, they are eligible for a 20% reduction in their policy. And it also helps the town with grant applications and receiving grant funding. At any rate, we're in the process of getting ready for that. It was delayed due to the retirement of our previous coordinator, which was Dabney Shelton, our previous permit officer. So that was extended from this past fall till March 24th. And I was speaking with the ISO representative who's handling the visit, who lives in Oregon, I believe. And she had read our new flood ordinance, flood damage prevention ordinance, to see if we can still get the same amount of credit. And when she got to the AO flood zone requirements, she said that there was an issue with that. And the issue wasn't specifically related to the language, but there was a new requirement that became effective in January of this year in CRS, which states that basically in order to, as a prerequisite for a community to receive a class 8 or better rating, that you must require a minimum 1 foot of freeboard in every flood zone. Freeboard is the difference between the base flood elevation and the height that is additional height that the town can require to elevate it even higher. So a long story short, her interpretation determined that our current AO definition did not apply 1 foot of freeboard. So we're proposing to make minor changes to that definition in order to meet the requirement. I've already sent the language to this representative. She's already read it and said, yes, we can implement this, and then you'll still be eligible to receive your credit as we would have, because we would hate to go from a 6 to a 9. That would be unfortunate. So it's a simple fix, and she said that they would be willing to allow us the time necessary to make this change. So we will be bringing this change to you all as well, most likely April 19th, your next meeting. It's 3 or 4 words in the definition.
Shouldn't take more than an hour. Got anything else?
That's all, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Well, we look forward to pouring over those ETAs as soon as you can shoot them our way. And if anybody has any questions, call Wes.
Yes,
As usual.
anytime,
Yeah.
please.
Okay, well, if there's no other business.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Tony?
Second.
Tony,
Thank you.
motion, Robert, second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Adjourn.
Nobody's ever opposed.
Thank you very much,
It's amazing.
everybody.
I've never heard anybody opposed.
Has anybody ever?
Nobody's ever opposed.
Yeah, I haven't seen one yet. No fights have broken out over adjournment.